There are hundreds of tax incentives for having a business, whether it's a big business or a small business or even a side hustle. Welcome to the Moms Making Dough podcast. I am your host, Kendra Hewitt, and today's episode is coming to you with a frequently asked question. And that is the topic I decided to discuss today, which is when to grow and when to let go of your financial team. Now, we are going to talk about this from both a personal side and a business side for all my mompreneurs today. So let's dive in. First off, we're going to cover personal first because this has been a big question I've been getting a lot lately. Um, oh man, I'm so excited. I have a new desk chair that my husband made while I was on vacation, and I'm just coming back from a vacation, April vacation with my mom, who's 76, and my daughter. And we went to Charleston. We had such a good time. And I just wanted to bring this topic front and center because, oh man, there's so many retirees down there, and just thinking about how I'm in that squeeze generation. And that squeeze generation is, when you have a young kid and then you also have an aging parent. And my mom is very savvy. She is extremely resilient and she was a very good businesswoman, um, and always in sales a majority of my life. She was trained as a chemist, and she worked in the lab. And then when she had me, she wanted more free time. So she went into real estate. And if any of you have someone you love in real estate, you realize that that is a total misnomer, that you have more free time if you work for yourself and you have um, you're in real estate. You work a lot of weekends, you work a lot of late nights. And the reason I bring that up is now she's in this phase where she's, starting to transition, where she is, like I said, 76 years old and still doing real estate deals. But I want to kind of bring this full circle because what stimulated me talking about this specific topic, especially when it comes to personal, was we just recently met with our estate attorney, and it made me really a question and reminded me about the importance of knowing the key players on your financial team. And here's what I found. I'm going to talk to personal first and then business second. When it comes to personal, so obviously my mom has had, she's had an estate attorney for a long time, and she's gone through several iterations of it. And this was a new attorney that was reviewing and looking at her current trust, the setup, and it was the first time that I'd been in the physical meeting with this attorney. And I chose her very specifically because she's worked with my mom in the past on many deals. I've worked with her as well. And she just has a really nice approach to it because I find what a lot of people, when it comes to your financial team, they don't know who those players should be. And the reason that I'm talking about Deb is because I approached her, and I just said, Deb, I know everything, all my mom's affairs. She is getting older, and some things have changed, and I think it's time for an update. Now, she was not the one who did my mom's original trust. So it was a really great process to sit there and go through what she did have, some of the changes we need to make, and also to really get educated. And this was really stimulated. I am in this place where I have, like I said, I'm in the squeeze generation. I'm 43 years old. And I obviously lost one of my parents when I was really young. I think I've talked about that before on the podcast. My dad died when I was 12 years old. And like I said, my mom's 76 today, and she raised us basically after my dad died on her own. And like I said, she was in sales. She had some investments she made, some really good ones, some that really hurt her. And while I was on vacation with her, it allowed me to start stimulate some of the conversations that I really wanted to have when we were not in our environment. So, going back to our meeting with the estate attorney, the reason that I really was thinking about this on the plane home yesterday, as I knew I was going to record today, was just like how many people don't really know what their parents' affairs are. And most people I find will avoid that until the inevitable happens. And so I'm sharing this episode today not to talk about a morbid morbid thing, but it's a morbid but also inevitable thing. And this past year, I have had 5 of my close friends, 4 of them being their moms, 1 of them being their dad, um, lose their parents. And it was actually one of the catalysts that stimulated me taking this trip with my mom, very impromptu. And like I said, we went to Charleston. We had an unbelievable time. But this was really in the back of my mind because, like I said, I had this meeting with her state attorney a couple weeks ago, and was given, a couple of things that we needed to get done prior to her revisions. So it made me start thinking because one of the things that I knew is my mom's always been pretty savvy in managing her money. And that was this is like, it costs so much money now for people to actually retire. Now, when you're in sales for yourself or if you have your own business, you have different vehicles than your traditional path that you would go to. So she had some of those set up. Some of them she has since not pursued anymore. And it made me really start to think like I didn't even know what my mom's accountant's name was. So like I didn't know she's start at the point where like she needs me to help her organize some of her tax stuff and just because it's a lot of different things. And I've got much more involved in the last couple months with actually looking at exactly at what she has. And it brought me to this question is like, how do you know when to grow and when to let go of your financial team? So, and this is on a personal level. So, I want to talk about the 3 people I feel that every single person, regardless of how much money you have or plan to have, that you should have. And I think I really want to talk about the order of importance here. And then we're going to shift to the business. So, first off, the person that I think is the most important to have on your team, and know and have who your parents use or who you have yourself. And I find many people have a big goose egg on this one is a personal accountant, a CPA, certified public accountant, who is typically, they are not going to manage your money. They're not going to help you make money. They are going to file your tax return. But the reason why I say this is the number one person that I want to know on my own personal financial team, but also on my team with my mom, is that you really want to start to know exactly like I feel like a lot of people have a very broad view of what they brought in, and I find with many of the women I work with, not even business owners, just working moms, or even CEOs of the household, is like you need to know the hard number of what actually comes into your household. And I've talked about this on so many episodes. And you also need to know like where you're falling from a tax perspective, because even if you bring that money in, we're just finishing personal filing deadlines, right? If you didn't file an extension, you filed this month just a couple weeks ago, on April 15th. And sometimes it's a really rude awakening for people. And it's a reactive response instead of a proactive one. So when we're talking about the number one person on your financial team is a savvy accountant. And here's why I say savvy. Not all accountants are created equally. And most accountants just wait for you if you're old school. It used to be, I know my grandmother's generation, they would put all the receipts in a shoebox and they would bring it to their accountant and their accountant would figure out what they owed and all of that sort of thing. Now we're living in totally different financial times. I mean, we are in the pivotal financial time, I feel like, in our not only our country, but in our personal lives because so many things are shifting. And it's not just the introduction of AI and all of these things, even though that is definitely shifting the landscape of our financial future. There is a lot of stuff going on underground that is going to start coming to light, and we're going to start to feel that both good, bad, and indifferent. So, the number one person I want you to have on your financial team is a savvy accountant. Now, what do I mean by a savvy accountant? I mean, not the one that's just going to ask you for your shoebox or your digital file of all your receipts or you to share access to, a spreadsheet that you made yourself of all of your expenses that might have really caught like you might have missed stuff. This is why I teach that you should also do your finances on a monthly basis and at least connect or talk to your accountant on a quarterly basis, even if you are just a W 2 filer, which really limits your amount of tax deductions. So, but it's really, really critical to know what are the facts I'm working with? What are the numbers I'm actually collecting? What is actually hitting my bank account? And that's the numbers that really get real and raw when you look at your tax return, specifically line 23 and 18, which is your annual gross income, and what you'll be taxed on. And then the second person, is and I want you to think about this too. Your accountant having an accountant and CPA is, you're looking at your present situation. Now, there are many people that file themselves. They use TurboTax. I am not a huge advocate of that because I know you leave money on the table if you do it yourself. You also set yourself up for a much bigger risk of audit when you do it yourself. Ask me how I know. So that's a whole episode for another day about surviving my IRS audit. That was several years ago. And it is actually the reason that I bring that up right now, and I feel like I touch upon this a lot, is because that was such a pivotal moment in my understanding of what my financial team needed to be on a personal and professional level. Second person on your team, I already covered, is an estate attorney. Now, most people, this is the same thing. Scarcity thinking allows them to say, hey, I don't have any assets to protect. Why do I need anything? Well, here's the thing, if you don't even have a basic will, never mind things that protect you even more from probate, like a living trust or revocable trust, it's called irrevocable trust. um, you are setting your kids up for a real big headache because what happens too is like even when someone dies and like let's say they have a car that's in their name and you can't access it or you can't like you don't know if there's a loan on it or not or you don't know where that loan goes to. You don't know all of these things that like could maybe you have a teenager that could use that car and there is things that can be set up like a pour over will even if you don't have a lot of hard assets like a real estate asset to protect. So, an estate attorney, you can find tons of them online now. Again, not all created equal, but I find a lot of people use like they used to use those companies like I don't even know if they exist anymore, like LegalZoom and that sort of thing, where you could set up your own will online. I do not advocate for those. Again, this is where you want an estate attorney to look at what is the picture you are working with. And that estate attorney, they're looking at your future. And here's the reality. I don't have to tell any of you this, but you don't know when that day is coming or that hour is coming where you're no longer going to be here. So, why would you not take the extra steps or extra effort to actually put that in place for your family for the future? So, this is going from the CPA being your present focus to your financial focus being for your family in the future by sitting down, not even engaging with a estate attorney, just sitting down and figuring out what you should have, what your options are, and what that should entail for your personal financial situation. Also, really, really big thing that I want to cover here too is that at the very least, if you do not have some sort of will or wishes in writing, and like I said, there's lots of rules based on different states that you need to know how your state operates when it comes to probate and estate law. Those rules, just like tax law, are changing all the time. So why would you not hire and engage a professional to guide you on that path so you don't have to become the professional on estate law? Because trust me, we want to talk about freaking boring. You think tax law is boring? Estate stuff, totally boring unless you're in the fire of it. So let's avoid that fire for your family and for yourself. Just give yourself that peace of mind with that second person on your financial team being an estate attorney. My recommendation is anytime you have a change in asset, let's say you buy a house, you sell a house, you want to get this looked at. And also in the state attorney realm, I want you to just really think about these are also people that should be preparing what is called a healthcare proxy for you, so that people can access your health information if you are for any ways incapacitated where you cannot do that. And I heard a really, and I'm just going to touch about it because this is why I wanted to bring this up in this episode, is that, I heard a story about a man in New Hampshire whose daughter went to the University of, Miami, I believe, and she died, and, she was in an accident, and not to get into specifics of the details of the story, but the big thing is that the family, her mom and dad, were on a I believe they were on a cruise somewhere. And they called and they said, "Are you so and so's mom?" And she was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "We need you to fly to Miami right now." And the mom could not get any information from the hospital at all about the condition of her daughter because her daughter did not have a healthcare proxy where she was listed and she was over 18, as that she was entitled to information. So again, healthcare proxies and that law differ state to state. I believe so. Just really hiring this person on your team is critical, critical, critical. The next person on your team is going to be a financial advisor. And I'm going to kind of do a two for one on this. This is also, many financial advisors can also set you up with different types of life insurance. And these are bare minimums. I believe life insurance is a bare minimum, but then there's so many other different insurances you can have now: long term care insurance, disability insurance, when it comes to personal things, obviously the basics like health insurance, home insurance, auto insurance. So, I personally used to have all of these different insurance agents, and now I really am trying and working on, still a work in progress for me, of consolidating my personal insurance so that it's a little bit more cohesive for me to manage. But you want to make sure that, and this is a really good question for a life insurance person, is like, you want to know once you know from your accountant what your actual income is. You really want to know, where do I want to put that? Where do I need to protect it in the case of that my exercising my life insurance? And again, I have another whole story about this when my dad died when I was 12, and my dad, as a fireman, had extremely limited policy on life insurance just because my mom and dad didn't know what to do. What they would No one told them that. And it put us in a really tight financial situation for a long time that my mom strategically got out of with a lot of hard work and effort, like I said, through real estate. But I just wanted to bring that up of just how important it is. And why I say it's a two for one is that also this is a part of, a lot of financial advisory firms will have a life insurance arm. I'm a huge advocate for a financial advisor, regardless of how much money you have to invest and or manage. I know families that have started with very, very little, just like I work with business owners who are paying themselves just very little to start. I like to say financial advisors are the same thing. I'm in the process right now of, again, the topic of this episode was when to grow and when to let go. And I'm in the process right now where it's like we've kind of outgrown the current financial advisor we have. And we have to kind of bring it more cohesive and in house on a couple things because there's a couple of things that, have just been missed by me working with multiple people instead of one cohesive person. I don't love the idea of the cohesiveness because then it's just one person that controls a lot of it. But obviously, I'm really on top and checking a lot of this often. And their financial advisor is going to look at more of your traditional type things, like your traditional 401k or Roths, or I'm not talking about huge strategies here. I'm going to get to some of those in the business side of it because that's a different type of financial advisor. But we're talking about your basic things that are going to set you up on like figuring out like how much money do I need to retire? And if you are like me, like retirement is like I have an allergic reaction to it, right? Like I know that's never going to happen. I'm always going to be driven to be doing something. That's just me. If you are a mom making dough, you know that there's a point where like you really want maybe not to retire, but you want to be able to have the peace of mind financially that if you don't want to work or if you want to volunteer your time instead of get paid for it, that you have that option because you have some smart investing strategies. And it's really great to have a financial advisor that is going to help you look at the long term plan for your financial future and then help you reverse engineer, which I talk a lot about, what that would take to get there. And again, there's so many changes going on right now with our financial climate that this is something where, like I said, you might need to grow into a new financial advising relationship and you might need to let go of the current one you have. When it comes to personal, I really find that there's a lot longer time period that you can maintain the current financial team you have if you have a very, not a very intricate financial picture. It's when we start getting into the business sector of it that we start to see a much broader definition of what needs to happen, and for you for planning, and it gives us a lot more tools and resources to work with. So let's switch gears into the business. How do I know when to grow my financial team and when I need to let go of some of the people on my financial team? Now, when it comes to business, I find depending on the trajectory and level of growth you've had in your revenue is what determines how often you need to really look at your financial team. Um, I when I first started our practices, I would kind of revisit this every, I would say probably 10 years. I would kind of look like I'd get a team going and I was very slow to build it. And like I said, those are episodes for another day because we could be here till tomorrow if I start talking about those. I will make sure I will get on and do those. But one of the things that I think is so huge about when it comes to your business financial team is that, the time period, like I said, as you start to grow revenue really starts to shorten the gap. So, for example, I'm in a place right now where I've had the same financial team for 5 years up until June of last year, June of 2024, and then things shifted. I had just built that team after learning some hard lessons with COVID in 2020. So I had that same exact team for about 4 years, and then now I'm transitioning to 2025, and that is, when I started kinda looking at some different moves I needed to make in terms of on the chessboard, and I have started to, one by one, start to up level some of my financial team at this point over the last year or so. So again, 4 to 5 years, and that was also too, I should say, with a very pivotal period of upheaval with COVID, and then a very pivotal growth period after. So when it comes to your business, that's where I really look at, like, first is, what has happened in my business that requires me to maybe have some extra, different advice. Also too is, like, if you are in a position where you're gonna scale, but most of all, if you are in a position where you are considering selling, that is a huge time to make a shift of letting go of some of the people that have helped you to that point. Maybe not all of them, but some of them, because you need a totally different team that's going to have a very different mindset when it comes to exit strategy financially, unless you want to get taxed or create a big situation for yourself. So I'm in that process now, like I said, where I'm just hiring some people that are starting, even though I exited a business last year, it was a non-traditional exit, I would say, where we sold to our associate doctor. So for us, now we're looking at like, hey, what does an exit look like in more of a traditional setting, and how do we need to be set up to do that if that does become something that we would want to entertain. So, the number one person on your business team is going to be your bookkeeper. Now, I have businesses that are 12, 15, 20 years in business that survive without a regular bookkeeper. Um, I think it is a nail in a coffin when it comes to a business. And most of all is that you don't have accurate data of where your revenue and where your expenses are currently at. Most people, like I said, if you don't have a bookkeeper from the outside and you do it yourself, just like I did for several years until I got audited. Again, story for another day. They you miss things. You miss things. The data isn't is important, but bookkeeping is very simple. It is importing data from hard sources. But they are not the people that are going to actually get you the tax strategies and that sort of thing. You need a whole different team for that, which we're going to get into. But bookkeeper is got to be number one when it comes to your business finances. Now, I also say if you own any real estate, investment property, I think you should, at the very least, have a bookkeeper. I think you can get away with it on 1 to 2 properties, but anything more than 2 properties, I would 100% say hire a bookkeeper. And it's really not that much money. There's so many people now that work from home, that just do it as side businesses. So you can find someone for really for any budget. And especially if they get it streamlined for you. I'm at the point where I used to meet with my new bookkeeper, which just started this summer. I used to meet with him once a week until we got a rhythm, and now we meet every 2 weeks. We are able to get through everything in 20 to 30 minutes, that needs to be done. And this is being done from multiple businesses. So this will be one of the best investments of your money. And it will also make you money because you will save so much time that you won't be adding the same column like I did with the constant interruptions, for several years, thinking that I couldn't afford a bookkeeper, which is totally scarcity thinking. And like I said, there's so many options for. Next thing is going to be your CPA. So if a bookkeeper looks and manages your everyday money in and out, a CPA, all their job is filing. A lot of people, the worst mistake I hear business owners is say is my accountant handles that. Anytime I hear my accountant handles that, I basically run the woods and I shiver because I know that that person is leaving so much on the table and putting so much trust in a person whose job is to input data from the bookkeeper or from you if you don't have one. And their job is not to save you money. Their job is compliance and reporting. A CPA is client compliance and reporting. So who saves you money? The third person that you absolutely need on your business team. And I would say if you have made $50,000 or more in revenue, this is when I start looking at a tax strategist. Now, tax strategist sounds really sophisticated and it sounds huge. Like it sounds like, hey, I have to be much bigger. Instead of a $50,000 a year revenue generating, I need to be at least a half a million. That's a total fallacy. And the reason why I say that is because there are things you can do as soon as you make your first dollar to not pay it to the government. And I like to say it this way. Every paying taxes is an honor and a duty that all of us have. There is no way around. And the reason I say it's an honor, which I didn't always believe, is because if you made a dollar, that means that they obviously want their piece of it, but they also make this tax code that allows you all these loopholes to figure out how you can keep that dollar working for you instead of putting it right back into the system. So, I really want you to really think about that, your CPA is for compliance and reporting and is not to help you save money. The tax strategist is. And this is when it comes to business because you do get so much. They want to encourage businesses. Businesses, especially smaller ones, are the heartbeat of the American economy. It's one of the ways that our economy is stimulated growth. It's a lot of the legislation they're pushing through right now is to re-stimulate not only bringing work back to America, but also just like stimulating the American dream of building a business, hiring employees, employing them, and rewarding you for doing so by giving you tax incentives, not loopholes. A lot of people with scarcity mindset, they will call them the tax loopholes. But there are so many things, and they give tax incentives for you to encourage you to do bigger business. And you can't use those to your advantage if A, you don't know what they are. And I can tell you this, there are hundreds of tax incentives for having a business, whether it's a big business or a small business or even a side hustle. If you have a W-2, that's become one of my specialties lately is working with women that are have a W-2, high income earners who are starting side hustles in hopes of releasing the golden handcuffs and switching to all entrepreneurship. But this is a real pivotal point for a lot of women business owners of, like I said, leveraging what I call the Tarzan approach, which is you're hanging from one vine, the vine of your current job or career, but you have a passion for something else or a purpose behind something else. So you're creating another vine for you to swing to from the current one you're on. So that's why I call it Tarzan because I almost think of like Tarzan and Jane swinging from one vine. And you don't want to let go of this vine that's supporting you until you have clearly defined what that vine is that you're going to swing to next. So, just really thinking about that is really critical. Is that those three people, when it comes to your financial team, the bookkeeper, the CPA, and the tax strategist, are your three main people on your business side. The next person on your business side is going to be a business attorney. And the reason why is that the business attorney is going to, first of all, most businesses, myself included, I'm in this process right now with two of my businesses where we're looking at the entity structuring because the entity structuring, how you're structured. Are you an S corp, a C corp, an LLC, a sole prop? Um, is critical to not only tax incentives, but also to how you're filing and like it legally, it goes way beyond the legalities of protecting you. So, how you're paying yourself also is entailed. So, I want you to really think about this here is that you should have a business attorney, and you're not going to have a lot of interaction with the business attorney, but you want to have someone that you can really trust and you can rely on if you do need something. For example, the tax strategist that I'm working with right now is reviewing all of my current entities. And how I am structured because I haven't done that in one of my businesses in a long time since we started. So almost 15 years versus I have a newer one and she's helping me put in some structure stuff that will help me with some of the new tax code coming down the line. So it's really important to have that person. Most tax strategists can hook you up with a business attorney if you need it. But am one of those people that I like to have relationships with that person that is my business attorney. And then the last person is going to be a financial advisor for your business. Now, there can be a lot of crossover on the financial advisor for both your personal and your business. I do find that currently that is the person I use. However, I do say this is that a ones that are more focused on business owners, they have a little bit different approach where they know some other loopholes and vehicles for you to stash cash for your future as the business owner. Because let's face it, if you started a business, you took all the risk. And because of that, our government wants to reward that risk taking and they want to give you other opportunities that do not exist when you are a W 2 employee of a company. They want to give you incentives for you being an employer who also offers retirement options to your employees. Things like traditional 401k setup, but also things like SEP IRAs, things like even self directed IRAs and cash balance plans, more advanced strategies when you have more larger revenue. And a lot of the traditional retirement vehicles that you would offer your employees, they cap out. They have different caps versus things like a cash balance plan or more strategic business owner type um, vehicles for retirement planning purposes that also have tax incentives for you to set up. So I want you to really just think about, you know, asking your financial advisor, do they have experience if you own a business with setting up additional options for funding not only your future, but also the future of your employees? Because that is a huge retention tool for you to be using for to keep really good team members that you can offer them benefits that are going to pay them in the future. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode. It was helpful on and it gives you a little bit more clarity and insight on when to grow and when to let go of some of your financial team. Again, if it's coming from a personal perspective, it is never too late to start putting these people on your team. The CPA or accountant, a estate attorney, and a financial advisor. And most people think, oh, that sounds expensive. There's a lot of people out there that, like, you can pay for a consult and they can do simple things, and that consult fee will go towards that. Make sure that you are not so in scarcity thinking. If you are in that types of thinking, then you really need to start to shift and start to do some of the work on your money blueprint, because these are things that are going to set your family up for the future. And then the next thing is really paying attention when it comes to your business of when to hire, when to hire to help grow your financial team, and when you need to let go of the current ones you have. And like I said, that's usually when you've had a big shift in revenue or perhaps a big change in your business model. Maybe you bought a building to operate your business out of. Maybe you want to buy a building to operate your business out of. Then you really need to start looking beyond those basic people of the bookkeeper, the CPA, and start getting much more involved with the tax strategy, having a business attorney relationship, and then, a financial advisor that's going to set up retirement options for you as the owner and also allow it to benefit and help your employees who you want to retain and reward for all of the work they've done for you. So I hope that this is a really helpful episode. As always, I try to keep them information packed. I know sometimes I'm like drinking from a fire hose, but I just hope that if you have listened to this episode and you have enjoyed it, that you will share it with someone that you think might benefit from this information. And also, if you could rate, review, or subscribe to Moms Making Dough, that really helps me. It also gives me some feedback on what some of the topics you're interested in the future. Just like I had today, like I said, I had a little bit personal story, but I also, and this is the types of questions I get a lot. And I'm loving, loving, loving answering your questions on the podcast. So keep them coming, and we'll see you next time on Moms Making Dough.